Hello everyone. Today our guest is Marga Berlinski, an intimacy and relationship coach. Marga helps people discover confidence, connection, and self-expression in relationships and intimacy. With over 15 years of experience, her approach blends coaching with practical exercises to create fulfilling and nourishing relationships. Welcome to Lexter Woodley Interviews. So, Marga, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Can you share how you transitioned from being a teacher to an intimacy coach?
Yes, I can. So I've been doing personal growth and development for years already, right? And I think for over 15 years already active in coaching, training, and teaching as well. And at a certain point, it started to shift where I had a more of a, desire and a vision for, I want to actually coach adults. And first it came more from theater, improvisation. So I was working with adults already in other fields. And then I started to specialize more in intimacy and relationships. And that's how I started to shift that. Yeah.
What was that moment, though, that you're like, okay, I'm going to shift. I'm going to shift towards the adults?
Yeah. Well, for the intimacy part, it was like I started really opening up that area for myself. Like, I love working with adults. It's fun. Also with children. I mean, they're both different worlds, right? But with adults, it's fun. You can address other things. And when I started to shift that area of intimacy for myself, I noticed, oh, wow, I'm really passionate about this. It lights me up. And it's really a place where I can have my full self-expression. Then I was like, I think I want to bring this to adults, this area. Not only the life coaching or theater only. I was like, this area of intimacy and relating really speaks to me. So that's how that came.
And it must be rewarding for you. Why is it rewarding?
I find it so beautiful to see how people let go of old beliefs, right? When I work with them, they come and, they're like shy or locked off from certain expression or feelings. And when we work, seeing them open up, that's just so much fun. And then their happiness and joy that people get from freeing themselves up. I think that's the best thing for me to see, that they can start expressing themselves, their own flavor. Yeah.
You said fun. And could you share something like a funny or surprising story of, the changes that you've seen in your workshops or your retreats? Or
I had one guy. It was like I was coaching him on dating, right? It was a sweet-looking guy, great guy, yet he couldn't kind of connect and get close to women. And that's how he came to me. And so we started working on him really expressing himself. Like we discovered where he was holding himself back, not giving himself the space to share. So we had one coaching session and I sent him out, go out dating. And then the next time he came back, I opened the door and he said, Marga, and he immediately hugged me and gave me chocolates. And he said, you never guessed what happened. And so what happened, he was on a dating event. And he practiced what we've been doing, like just basically being himself without holding back. And he was just sharing very alive with a lady there, and he had a great conversation. And then he said, I looked up, and then all the women were standing around me listening. And he was like, whoa, what happened? And so he really found that confidence, you could say, around, wow, I don't have to pretend a certain thing. I don't have to put up a facade of a certain thing. It was way more fun to share what's really there for me that lifts me up, instead of having to do some strategy around, in this case, women and dating. And so when he found that he could have his own expression, he was so happy. And now he is in with his partner, and he found a partner. But the fact that I opened the door and he was almost like jumping me to hug me, that was so sweet.
And did you say that was after one session with you?
Not one session, no. We had a coaching, like a packet. I do that with people. Must have been halfway through the process. And then one of the things started to click for him. And that was just beautiful.
How did you end up leading Turn On Netherlands? Turn On the Netherlands.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was a name that I got via an event that was called Turn On I don't even know where that was, but I was like, oh, I can bring this to the Netherlands. I can turn on the Netherlands. So I was inspired by another event that was abroad. And I was like, okay, that's what I will call my business. Yeah.
And since when do you have the business?
I think 7 years now. Yeah.
So it's about relationships and intimacy. Yeah. And how would you define intimacy?
Yeah. It's for me about an experience of really being seen and really seeing another person, right? Intimacy, often people relate to sexuality, and I think it's more than that. So sexuality, yes, that's involved, but it's more. It's like an experience of connection, right? So intimacy you can experience in a moment of eye contact, can be when you share something vulnerable and the other person opens up in front of you, and there's a moment of connection and intimacy, as in real, authentic sharing. Or it can be when you're in an intimate act and you're sharing desires and you feel all of that energy move through your body. Yeah, so it's a whole world, I'd say, of an expression and a way of being together, being intimately connected. Yeah.
What are the challenges then when it comes to intimacy? Since you're coaching through, to get towards an intimate state or whatever, what are the challenges then?
Yeah, see, people really struggle either voicing desires or their needs, to be really knowing what they want, feeling connected to themselves, but also the shyness or the fear of saying. Sometimes people know what they want, but then actually saying it, they feel very vulnerable. They don't know how to give words to things. So it's really being open. Most people, it's really hard to actually be open for what's real for them. And that's what I do most of the work on as well. It's like, okay, how can you be open with what you want and need? And if you don't know that, we first do that inner work of what do you want? And how can you discover that in connection?
Would you say that there are levels to intimacy? Like maybe someone knows to be at level 1 or something like that in being intimate, in how to share. And, are there levels to opening up and in being intimate or your expression in intimacy?
I don't think so. You're either open or you're not, right? You're either pregnant or you're not, right? So it's like, no, you're either open or not. And then obviously you can look, how much am I willing to share? Because that's different for each and everyone. How much am I willing to express myself? I wouldn't categorize it in levels though. It's just, can you be there, open, and share what's there for you? And then choose what it is that you want to share.
Can intimacy be standardized or something like that? Like, okay, that is how openness looks like, right?
Yeah. If you do A and then follow B, then the result is intimacy.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think so.
No, okay.
Right?
Okay.
No, I mean, that's the thing. People try to strategize so much. And that's also what I see, I'm also a dating coach. What people do in dating, but also in intimacy relationships, like what do I need to do or say to make this happen? But what happens is you end up in your head thinking, you're strategizing, you're busy with yourself, while intimacy happens in connection. So when we're in our head strategizing, we're not here anymore, right? Now, obviously, you want to think about what do I want to share, right? Or have a moment of reflection. Nothing wrong with that. But connection happens or intimacy happens between people. So a strategy is not going to help you. Maybe it works sometimes, but that's not where it actually happens, right? So having a strategy often gets in the way. And I am usually working with people, no, get those strategies out of the way. The strategies protect you from something, right? Often it actually protects from being vulnerable, open, authentic, right? And protect ourselves. Yeah.
Now, how does online dating play a part in... Maybe online dating is a barrier in, not having the strategies and, having the intimacy work or not. I mean, how do you look at online dating?
Yeah, online dating, it really changed the landscape of dating, right? In the past, you had your group of people, when there was no online dating, you had your friend group or societal group where you belong to, and often dating and finding a partner happened in those groups, right? So there was not a big pool of people per se, if you could so say so, where you could find a partner in. And online dating opened that up completely, right? You can now date the whole world if you want to. Thousands of people to swipe through. So that makes it way more challenging to actually find a person that has things with you in common, matches a certain worldview, or things that you want to share. So that makes it way more challenging. Yeah.
But you as a dating coach, you can, pass through the challenges and be like,
well, obviously it takes something, right? Yeah. And it really takes that being clear on where you are, what you want, and be really open about what you want. What I often see is people are like, send a message like, hi, how are you? And that's the opening sentence of a hopeful connection with someone, versus saying, okay, would you like to go on a date with me? And on the first date, like, I'm up for creating a family.
Right away, but hi, you need to start with something, right? But are you saying like, hi, scratch that out, say right away?
Well, I would introduce yourself first,
okay,
right?
Okay.
No, but
yes.
Obviously, you would get connected, introduce yourself. See what is there in common. But, people often keep their distance. Often I hear people say, well, I need to check it out first. But then you actually don't know if there's any compatibility, right? And it's a safe space. It's like, if the other is open, I might open up too. Versus, you know what, I'm open and available. Who wants to play, so to speak, right? Who is willing to be a partner with me, and let's see what we can create. And then you really take it, in Dutch you say, heft in eigen handen, but how would I say that in English, right? You really take it in your own hands, literally, like, you know what, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to tiptoe around people. This is who I am and what I'm up to. And that will attract people who are also attracted to that kind of connection or relationship. Otherwise, you have two people kind of being careful and waiting around each other. You can date a long time before you actually go deeper with someone.
So vulnerability and openness, they seem to be quite important and need to have that actually very quickly in the intimacy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's where I stand. Yeah.
So I've been dating. I'm not on the market anymore, but I used to see dating, and still do actually. I would compare that to job interviews. Like, okay, you want to be open, but you don't want to say, that you have maybe lots of bills that you need to pay, and you're testing the waters.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you should, see dating a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah.
But would you then tell me, like, why would you see it that way? Be open and, let the person know all your books maybe, and then see what
they will find out anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So if that's going to be a problem in the future, you better deal with it straight away. Right? So it's like, are you able and willing to give yourself? Right? Dating is really looking at yourself like, am I actually willing to give myself? Because people often say, I want a relationship, but then when it comes close, there is a lot of protection. And they're actually not willing to give themselves or be vulnerable or risk it. Risk for being hurt. Yeah. It involves sometimes a bit of heartbreak. Right? And as much as we are protecting ourselves or keeping that on distance, then the connections never can get deeper. And what I see is that when people say, I go on 2 or 3 dates, but then it kind of chills out. Right? It doesn't go any further, and then we don't speak with each other again. And it's like, because there's people there who are actually both checking the waters out. And it takes something being vulnerable. I don't say that as, just be vulnerable. It really takes something. But if you're up for creating a beautiful, deep connection and finding a life partner where you want to spend the rest of your life being yourself with, you better start with that up front, right?
It requires some self-awareness, I would think, too. Like, where am I? How do I feel towards this person? Or, how do I feel in my body, how do you, in a healthy manner, perhaps, how are you busy with the self-awareness, but also aware enough of the other person? How do you manage that? How do you advise on that?
Yeah, we do really the work of what happens automatically where you are when you're dating. What is automatically maybe the protection layer you put up, or the pretense? Like, oh, I worked with this guy the other day. He was so great, but he was like, no, I have to pretend that I have it all together, because if I show her that I don't have it all together, right? I'm sometimes struggling with stuff in life. They might not want to date me, right? And like, well, you want to be you. People want to choose you for everything. And so he was really, I would just say that, constrained in expressing himself in his head, right? And so we do then the work to be like, can you be okay with yourself? That's the work. Can you be fully in approval of yourself? Love every bit of you. And then you can go out and play. Yeah. Which is, we still have our feelings and they still come by. Yeah. But having that awareness, I think, is really important, that whatever's going on here, that we have a certain level of freedom or awareness around it. So we're not stopped when it actually comes to connecting more intimately.
How self-confident does someone have to be in expressing their intimacy and dating and building a relationship, long-term, all that? How does self-confidence play a role?
It's important. And I wouldn't wait until you have a certain level of self-confidence. Because the confidence will come when you start opening up and growing and sharing and expressing. Because then you actually discover in connection. Right? Versus like, oh, I need to have a certain level of confidence before I can open up. Right? It's like intimacy develops, and you develop in connection with others. So you do need to have a certain level of confidence, but I think you mostly need to have willingness. A willingness to risk it. And maybe mess up sometimes. And that's where I come in, right? When you come in heartbroken from your date, you're like, all right, come over here. We then look also at, okay, what are the stories that you're adding to it? What do you make it mean about yourself? Yeah, he didn't want a next date with you. Now, what do you make it mean? Right? We often suffer or disconnect or don't want to be open because we think, all these negative things about ourselves. So we need to deal with that negative self-image and see like, oh, somebody saying no to my request to date doesn't mean I am the most unwanted person in the universe, right? So, yeah, it takes that awareness and willingness to look and create that self-love, right? So, because if we can have that love for ourselves, then, okay, then we can go out. Confidence is part of that, I think, yeah.
Being a coach, talking to people who want to, successfully date, successfully have relationships. What is the biggest myth that you tackle with these people?
Yeah, I would say in dating is that you have to find the one. And I come from a place, no, you have to be the one.
Say that again. I like that.
So in dating, right, we often go to, where is the one out there? I need to find him or her. Well, I work and coach from a place of, rather than looking for the one, what does it take for you to be the one? So what qualities are there to develop? What vulnerability or openness do you need to start to step into? That you can attract that person that you want, right? Because maybe the one walked by, but you're so busy strategizing, you didn't even see them, right? So I think that's the biggest myth in dating, that you have to find someone out there that complements you, that will rescue you from whatever you think you need to be saved from, right? But no, who are you going to be in relationships? What are you bringing? And that's where connection then can happen. So that's for dating. Myths in relationship, right? You say, yeah, there's different challenges people really deal with. I think maybe part is also there that of, my partner should compliment me or be the one as well. Like that will be the one and only who will make me happy, right? Or my happiness is dependent on my partner. So if you can come from a place of I'm responsible for my happiness and I can hold my desires and happiness, and then we can create a great relationship together, then I think that will make a big difference. Yeah.
So you give these, suggestions and advice and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also read about shoulder massages and improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
And how do these things play a role in the coaching, and dating, and how do you have this play a role in all of it?
Through my workshops, right? For example, I do Tantra Speed Date where people come for dating experiences, but we teach them dating skills, or actually more relating skills, connection skills. So rather than doing the standard talking for 3 minutes, we give them exercises, right? For example, there is one of the exercises we do is a massage, where we practice, where people can ask for, we call it active receiving, like, okay, can you give an adjustment to this touch? Can you thank your partner for what you enjoy? Can you make offers, right? So those are little exercises or fun improv, small improv exercise where people discover how they can express themselves in many different ways. And that connection is available in different layers and levels, right? It doesn't only have to be do we match in terms of work interest, right? It can actually be, you might not look like the one I prefer, right? You might not look like my preferred dating partner, but when I actually with you and we do this exercise, there's so much connection I experience. So there's, I would say the embodiment part as well, learning to listen to your body, feeling yourself. Maybe that's the answer to your question around, well, what does massages have to do with this, right? And that's also part of the more conscious sexuality practices or intimacy practices that I teach, where we learn to be more embodied, be aware of what's happening in our body, what do we desire, and learn to communicate openly about that.
What would you say about masculine energy and feminine energy? What do you see happening nowadays, in single people and couples?
Yeah, there's so much written about it, and there's a lot of different views of what masculine, feminine energy is. I come from the perspective, and it's a flavor of tantric perspective around, we have these energies in us. They are not related to gender, right? So the pitfall is a bit to think, masculine energy belongs to the men and feminine energy only to the women. It's like, no, we have both these qualities inside us, and maybe we need to learn how to balance these and learn to play with them to create attraction, right? So having an awareness of them, it's like a tool you can use, right? So you can be like, there you go. I'm feeling more of my masculine energy today. I will get things done. I will create it. I'll create the structure. And then the feminine is maybe the more instinctive, more in flow state, surrendered space. Can you do that as well, right? So I would say knowing about them, feeling the differences can give you more tools to play with. Yeah.
And not per se to see how it matches. If someone has more masculine energy, that the other person might, with the feminine energy, think, we are compatible or not. So you don't even...
Not per se, because, because you can play and shift your energy. Nobody's always an equal amount of masculine or feminine energy or the other way around. So, an attraction can be created if there is, we call it a strong masculine pole and a strong feminine pole. I will not go into that too much, right? But attraction can happen when there is that energy, and you can play with that, absolutely. But I wouldn't hang up your partner of choice to it, because every moment we're different. And we do have more often a preference in, I'm more rooted in a masculine energy or rooted in a feminine energy.
You mentioned something about Tantra.
Yeah.
I know a little bit, I know enough about it to know that is not my cup of tea, but explain about it so that the listeners and the viewers know what that means.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a heavy-duty tantrika myself. I have practiced it. I like a lot of stuff around it, but I do a lot of other conscious sexuality practices as well. It's a way of looking at how to work with energy, how to work with connection. There's many different philosophies even within a tantric tradition that if you ask 20 people, you get 20 different answers. So it's a way of relating. It gives you tools for connection. And it has to fit with you. Yeah. So if it doesn't fit you, then you find something else that fits you, right? Yeah. And I would say I use just different exercises and ways of playing with connection. Also what I take from those tantric practices, and I use what I like. And some things I don't.
So now, some practical, suggestions, advice for people who are looking for a new partner.
Yeah.
Like maybe 3 or 4 key things before someone starts dating.
Okay. Don't wait with dating. That's the first one, right? You will never feel ready. You'll never be ready enough. There will always be reasons that you will not want to date. Okay? So if you're really like on that edge, should I date or not? And you're like postponing it, pushing it forward, either find help or throw yourself in there. Only in discovering while you're on the dating world, that's where you will discover what works and what not. And if you have the same thing coming to you over and over, like the same pattern of, like I said, maybe after 2 or 3 dates, it never gets any deeper, or you never seem to attract the person that you're really interested in, I'd say find support. Okay, don't keep trying the same thing, like doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result over and over. So yeah, don't wait. You're not gonna figure it out in your head, right?
Okay.
So yeah.
That's one. And next?
Yeah, like get clear on what it is that you're available for. What do you actually really want?
Make a list.
For example, you could be like, yeah, I actually am looking for a partner and create a family. Or I'm not available for a family. I want to date and have casual intimacy. And be upfront about that. Now, that's, again, vulnerable, right? But get clear where you're standing. Okay? I think that's important.
Do you have another?
I'd say do look at dating in places where you find your flavor of people, so to speak. Like that you go to places where if you have an interest in certain like hobbies, museums, that you go find people who have same interests. That really helps, right? Like I said, the swiping on the app, there's so many people out there. So find communities or groups where you can connect and meet people. And another thing is let your environment know you're actually looking to find a partner, right? Who knows? Like most people actually find partners via friends, their communities, right? So that's still really valid, right? So say to your friends like, hey, do you know a great friend that maybe wants to date you, and can you introduce ourselves? That could also be a way.
Would you recommend blind dating? Setting people up for blind dates?
Yeah, well, why not, right? And I would look at who is setting it up. Is there actually any looking at, are these people somewhere related? But I actually never had that question. That's so funny. Should you blind date? Well, why not? If you are out there to play and practice connection, you'll discover more about yourself in that. And it's, of course, you don't know who you're going to get. So if you're really intentional and like, you know what? I want this type of person, a blind date. Yeah, you don't know what you're going to get. So that's a little bit of a lottery. Right? Yeah.
And for someone who has never done online dating, would you recommend to go online, or would you be like?
Well, I don't know. It's so different for people, like what works or not. Some people go online and they have the best time. Others do it for years and actually really don't really find what they're looking for. It is a way to meet people. So, yeah, I would definitely not rule it out. I would definitely look at, but then I would really actively look at the profiles that attract you, right? And so instead of hoping that the right match connects with you, you go like, okay, look actively through the profiles that, would you want to date this person? All right, go for it, right? So that you're actively looking for that person you think might match with you. Yeah.
For couples.
Yes.
What would you advise for the ones who want to reignite their passion, their fire for their long-term relationship? What would you say? One, two, three, like a few things.
Yeah, well, have a conversation, right, with your partner. So couples stop talking about it. We often live in assumptions about what our partners want. We usually don't even have language to really speak about what we want. So realize that you might not, actually really ever talked about it, like really before. Like, when you're in love, in the beginning of the relationship, it kind of happens on its own. Like, you have the greatest intimacy and everything seems to flow. We don't even have to talk to each other about what we want, right? But then when that phase passes, yeah, for some couples, they can keep it alive. But a lot of people get into kind of habits, right? We know this is how we do it. Mm-hmm. And then often people are like, get a little bit bored about that. Or, this is not exactly what I wanted. Or there's something else I would like to try, but we actually never talked about it. And then they feel maybe some barriers to speak about it. So it starts with opening the conversation.
And when would be a good time to speak about intimacy or, whatever, the passion? Yeah. When would be a good time? After, like something passionate has occurred and then you're like, what, we should do more of this? Or what would you advise?
Yeah, that you both have the space and time for it, right? Where you have the time to have like the time and calm to talk about it. Now, what I see often is that one of the partners has been really busy with it, been thinking about it a lot, has a lot of questions or desires, and the other partner is not as aware or not even busy with that. And so then what happens is that the one partner has been thinking about it a lot, suddenly burst out and like, we need to talk about it. And the other one is like, oh my God, what happened? Yeah. Right? So there is some work to do to look, what is it that I'm coming from as the partner who wants to bring this discussion up, right? Like, what is it that I actually desire and see for our relationship, right? Because intimacy is something you do together. So you can say like, I want us to both feel really connected or intimate together, and I want to have a conversation, right? Are you up for that?
And if the person says no?
Yeah, that's a different challenge, yeah. Right? Yeah, that is. It is a challenge, and it takes a lot of listening. Understanding why is there an immediate no, or how am I saying it in a way that my partner feels defensive, right? Because we do often come in these conversations with a lot of charge around something's wrong, or something should be different. So that's that work to do. That how can I take that charge out? If it's not about something's wrong, but about how can we deepen our connection, and then it's about listening, right? And understanding each other, finding each other in that.
So have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And maybe listening that is in it, or is that a number two? Is that another point?
Yeah, listening is a big part of it. Can you actually hear what your partner has to say without making it wrong, without rejecting what they're saying? Because that's where it often gets difficult for people, right? Some have walked with certain desires for so long, they finally dare to open up, their partner is not reacting the way they want them to, and then everything is wrong and disconnect happens. So yeah, it's a skill to develop, to be able to keep listening to, okay, what is this? How does this feel for you when I talk about it? What comes up for you? And I feel quite vulnerable about this, right? Like, can you hear my side out? So that takes something, yeah.
Do you have another point or another question that you would ask a partner or partners together?
Well, I would invite them to play, to start.
Play what?
Yeah, well, if both partners are willing to start to engage in their intimacy and find more what they like, right? Start experimenting, playing. There's lots of fun things you can do. Like I give lots of exercises where you can explore newly, right? The biggest thing is that, like I said, we come from a past where we are habituated to do things, right? Even before the relationship that you had, right? You have a whole past of growing up with expectations, how you should be, how you shouldn't be in intimacy, ex-partners you did certain things with, and then you come with all that past into your new relationship, and you're like, I'm ready, I'm here for you. So you need to kind of know, like, oh, well, past stuff will come up, and find a way to play with it. And find, sometimes you need to park that old stuff and be like, how can we discover each other newly? Through touch and exercises. Last thing about it is, like, especially in long-term relationships, giving myself as an example, I'm in a 9-year relationship. And at times I find myself bored, right? With intimacy, I'm like, I guess we have our routines, right? And then it's like, where have I stopped giving myself? Where have I stopped engaging or
That's an interesting one. So you find yourself bored, but then you look towards yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very tempting because I automatically go to he should do it. Okay, like, that's what's automatically there, right? He should fix it, right? Why should I be the one? However, that's not where I have any power, right? The power is where I can look, okay, where did I stop? Where I didn't express? Or am I waiting for him to make me feel a certain way?
Nice.
And
I love it.
Yeah.
Go on, continue. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
that's good.
I just love it. Yeah.
And so even in my relationship, what we created is we keep discovering each other each year newly. That's kind of the place that we like to play. It's a creation. It's made up, right? We are keeping the spark alive. And so that means sometimes we do workshops or we try different things out.
You go to a workshop together, or you have a workshop among the both of you?
Yeah, we both. Sometimes we go somewhere together, or I read up something, I'm like, let's try this, or sometimes it's having that conversation where you're like, it's not really working at the moment. What's going on? Is there anything on your side going on? This is what's there on my side.
That's pretty heavy, though, to say it's not really working at the moment.
Only if you think it's wrong. I can say it without anything wrong, right? I can say, hey, I find there is not as much connection as we had last year. So what's going on? Like, it's not really working the way we say we want it to. I think that's an important one, that you come from that context. Hey, we have a certain vision for how we want to be together, and it's not there. So that's kind of a way to look at, like, oh, well, that passion or the spark that we say we love to nourish in our relationship is not there. So that's kind of a signal of there is something going on. And if you can stand and there's nothing wrong, you actually have the power to then look and play with it and intervene. But the moment you go to know there's something wrong, we need to fix me, we need to fix you, people get into this wrong, right model. That makes it way more difficult. Yeah.
What do you think of date nights for couples?
I think they're great.
Really?
Yes. And then you mean planning your night out? I love them.
Okay.
Yes.
So you guys do that?
Yes. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I started to work a lot last year, and we found intimacy kind of went more to the background in our relationship. And we had a conversation like, what's going on? We're not as intimate as we used to be. And then my partner really well remarked, said, yeah, it seems like your evenings are more occupied with work. And then I looked, it was like, yeah, you're right. So we're going to have one night a week where we plan to really be together for intimacy. And that doesn't necessarily mean sex, right? There's no pressure on something has to happen. It's really, we look, what feels resonant for us? What do we desire? If that's sexuality, great. If that's something else, also great. But that really works.
What can the other things be if it's not sex? I'm not saying that it has to be sex and that's the only way to think, but what are other things to do that work on creating or enhancing intimacy?
Yeah.
For instance, a date night.
Well, we do massage, right? Because sometimes people feel pressure that something needs to lead to sex, that date night has to be sexual. And then people start to resist it because, you don't want to do anything you don't really want. So our agreement is, we look at what feels good for us in the moment. If we feel we want to create some sexiness, we do that. If we're both like, oh my God, I'm too tired, we're just going to cuddle and chat. Or we do something else that we enjoy in that moment. But it is spending attention on each other, right? So it's not watching a movie and kind of checking out on the couch. That I wouldn't recommend. It's actually actively putting attention on each other, where you spend time relating, connecting, maybe discovering something new about each other, even after 9 years of relating. Yeah. And date nights are so great because people sometimes ask me, like, shouldn't it be spontaneous, right? It feels so forced. Well, if you don't create it, it will not come out of itself, right? We have busy lives. And if you're not planning time for it, it will not happen. Predictably, it will not happen. And that also has to do with desire. Yeah, you can get spontaneous arousal and be like, ooh, come on, darling, which you would have often in the start of a relationship. But later, you want to bring, it's kind of more responsive desire, right? Where you can bring the desire up or the desire for more intimacy, which is perfect too. But a lot of people don't have that context that that's actually just as fine. We think it has to magically happen versus you could actually create it and bring it in the relationship.
Can you share about the 21-day relationship challenge?
Yeah.
21-day relationship challenge.
Yeah, that's the one I created, right? Yes. You can sign up, on my website. Yeah, it's a challenge I created for 21 days. Every day you get a little exercise or an invitation to reflect. That is about how do you connect? Who are you in connection? So that's a way to play with that. And an invitation to see, if it's not about surviving my connections or surviving this right-wrong thing, what is a place I could come from? So in the challenge, you end with also creating a vision for yourself or some kind of, I let you make a little mood board about who do you want to be in connection with people. It's a fun, sweet, simple challenge. It's not, you might be like, oh my God, I have to create a mood board. It could be like 2 or 3 pictures, okay? It's really about an awareness you bring and noticing what happens in connection for you. Yeah. And you can do that with romance or with friends or family. Oh. Yeah, it's not necessarily related to romance only. Yeah.
There are some taboos I want to talk to you about.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get specific, what are taboos that you have been hearing during these conversations with people who are looking to date or to have the relationship, more passionate?
Yeah.
What are the taboos that you have been seeing?
Yeah, when it comes to intimacy and sex, it's actually quite taboo to say that you don't know or it's not working. Or you and your partner you can't really find that intimate connection and you're struggling. Right? There is some kind of idea that in a long-term relationship it will disappear. Which I think it happens, but living by that is like that really sets you up for a relationship without intimacy, if you're gonna live by that. But yeah, there's quite a taboo around being open about it and actually be real about what's happening. And that's why people say everything is fine or I'm fine with it. Well, if you really look, maybe they're not as fine as they say they are. Yeah. Yeah. And for dating, I'd say a taboo is actually say that you really want to have a loving relationship, right? That you actually would love to have a partner in your life. And that it's maybe you feel vulnerable expressing that. Yeah.
Well, let me be open now because I was thinking about whole other topics when I was saying that I wanted to start with taboos.
Good.
I was thinking about BSDM and
taboos! I love those too.
Whole other direction.
Different segue. Great. All good.
Yeah. How about those?
All those. I mean,
stuff?
kink and BDSM are still very much a taboo.
Right? Why though? Why?
It's not spoken openly about it. The information you get from media is very one-sided, right? The kink, BDSM, I'm active in that world. But that wasn't until I started my own sexual discovery and journey. So 10 years ago, I was, somebody came to me and we talked about it and was like, you with your weird ideas, I would never engage in that. Right? So, yeah, so there's a very one-sided image we get from kink and BDSM. Like it's all leather, dark, and somehow only around power play.
Oh, it's not more than that?
There is a whole world in that. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually, I would say that, world is just as varied as people are. And what you say is your kink or a fetish, that's yours. For some people, it's playing with feathers. For some, it's dirty talk. And yes, some like to be tied up or have more intense play where sensations really get stimulated. But it's still very much in the realm of it's weird or there's something wrong with you. Yeah, that's definitely a taboo. Although more people practice it, than you think. Yeah, yeah.
How do you help, in embracing these unique, I shouldn't even say unique, in these desires?
Yeah.
How do you help in that?
Yeah, it starts with finding approval for yourself, seeing where you have shamed yourself. There's a lot of shame and embarrassment around it, and people think they're strange, which, as it's not openly discussed, and mainstream is often relating to such desires that are not standard as weird. So yeah, it starts with being able to openly speak about it. And so in my sessions with clients is that I say, I heard a lot, I've seen a lot. There's not much that can really shock me. So feel free to express yourself. And then people can relax and be like, oh, maybe I'm not as weird as I thought, right? And the ground rule, though, is when you engage in this kind of play that people need to give consent. It needs to be really clear. All the people involved, should be a full yes to that. Right? So, and when adults come together like that, I think have fun playing with whatever it is you love that really makes you turned on, happy, or connected. Yeah.
Do you have an example of someone or a couple that overcame this shame or, and then they flourished or whatever?
In the kink world, yeah, I worked with...
Or another taboo?
Well, open relating. For example, I worked with a couple who came to me and said, actually, we want to open up our relationship, which is still not very common. It's starting to become more normal to speak about it.
What do you mean with open relationship? To have
intimacy with others.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that could be even from finding, open relating or open relationship is there's more people intimately involved in the relationships, whether it's only sexual or some people even find partnership where 3 people or more engage in a romantic connection. So they came to me and with those questions and how can we do this with care for the relationship, which is really great that they wanted that because I often see people opening up, but it involves a lot of emotions and navigating, different spaces you go through. So having a structure around that and doing that with care is really important. And they are doing that now successfully in their relationship. Yeah, yeah.
Do you speak with more couples or singles? Or is that...
It's really a mix, yeah. I think overall I speak more to singles, but I do quite a lot of work with couples as well, yeah.
What is one thing that you wish everyone understood about intimacy?
Yeah, that there's nothing wrong with your body. You're perfectly fine, and please take the time to find out what works for you, right? You work in your unique way. There is no standard way. I think that's so important, right? That we compare ourselves so much and we're so hard on ourselves, right? That we think because we don't look like that person or we don't feel what we think we should. And then we kind of embarrass ourselves, shame ourselves, or we think there is something wrong, and we live in a world that there's something wrong with us. No fun there. So yeah, please be loving with yourself and take the time to really discover what works for you. Yeah.
Are there cases that, although you believe in, loving your body, are there cases that you would say but work on your body?
Well, definitely take care of yourself. Yeah. Really, take care of your body. Be loving with your body. A lot of things we do to ourselves, living unhealthily, comes from a disconnect with ourselves. So yeah, definitely take care of yourself and your body. Yeah.
What is a legacy that you would like to leave behind in this, world of relationships? Say we're 200 years further, what would you want to leave behind that we know, yeah, Marga did this?
Oh, wow. That's so great. Yeah, that we really practice connection, right? That the focus is on how can we create connection? How can we come from, let's make it work between us, versus who is the right one and who is the wrong one. And even if you don't want to stay romantic partners, right? Sometimes relationships do end, which is okay, right? That there's nothing wrong with any one of you, but you can complete your relationships powerfully and lovingly. But that it's about that. It's about how can we stay connected. Yeah.
And what do you think will happen? What do you have planned for the coming, say you're going to live 200 years. What can we expect in the coming years and decades from you?
Oh dear. Wow. Yeah, just keep bringing this message and providing spaces where people can really discover who they are and have space where there's just safety to look and deal with everything that gets in the way of you being fully self-expressed. All that noise in our head or stories we have about ourselves or things we get stuck in. So there is spaces for that where people can really create who they authentically are. Yeah.
And you'll be doing that through one-on-one sessions and
workshops
and retreats.
Yeah.
Give us a bit more about that. A little bit more about the workshops and the retreats, that we know how to find you
absolutely.
and how to...
Yeah, so workshops I do. So I give the Tantra Speed Date. That's a dating workshop, which is really beautiful for connecting in a different way. I give workshops sometimes for women only. So women can get together, really discover what does it mean being an empowered woman, or what does it mean to fully express myself, or workshops around relationships. And then there is the one-on-one work where you can really take your personal situation deeper, right? You can do quite some work in workshops, but if you're with a big group, if you want to work on specific things, the one-on-one you can take deeper. So absolutely.
How long are the one-on-one sessions?
For me, often 75 minutes.
75 minutes?
Yeah.
So if I want to send some people to you, I would have some, 75-minute blocks.
Yeah. So I often start with what I call my desire coaching session, where we really look, where are you right now? What are some challenges you have? But also, what are your desires? What do you want to grow into? And then we look, how can we bridge that gap, so to speak, between where you are right now? What is it you want to develop in? And then we look, what are the skills or the things to let go of? And then out of that conversation, we look, okay, maybe we do a coaching series. And then I will give an advice on what I think would help or make a difference. So for 75 minutes, my desire coaching session, that, you get a clear picture of where you are right now. What is it that you could start growing into? And then we look, if you want to continue working with me, then how would it look like? Yeah.
And there are still retreats.
At times, I do organize retreats or co-organize retreats, be part of it from a team, as well. And so most of the things you can find either on my website or social media.
Name the website, please.
Turn On the Netherlands, but in short, it's turnonnl.com. Yes, thank you. Yes.
And you're also on social media.
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook with Turn On the Netherlands, Instagram and Turn On the Netherlands. Feel free to email me, info@turnonnl.com. Yeah, because I'm always willing to have a short conversation. That really is. I want to invite people to don't hesitate to reach out, either email me or call me, because you might have been walking around with questions for a long time around these areas, right? Intimacy and dating. So, know that it's really okay to call and ask me some questions. And then we look, what's next for you?
Thank you so much, Marga.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. And thank you for
such a cool conversation.
Yeah. And thank you for having me and creating this together. You really,
Thank you.
Good.